On my 60th birthday, I was handed a foreclosure notice on my house. Not a warning. Not a polite little letter asking us to call someone. A final notice. The kind of paper that doesn't ask what you think. It tells you what's already in motion. The kind that turns your stomach cold before your eyes even finish the first line. I stood there in my own kitchen with that envelope in my hands, staring at words that didn't belong in my life. Default. Cure amount. Auction date. And my address printed like a death certificate. My address. The house I'd lived in for decades. The house I'd scrubbed and painted and decorated and repaired. The house where my daughter learned to walk. The house where my husband and I celebrated anniversaries and Christmas mornings and every ordinary Tuesday that made a marriage feel real. And according to the bank, we were days away from losing it. Behind me in the living room, people were laughing. I could hear paper plates being stacked. I could smell the cheap vanilla cake Kate had baked because we were doing it at home this year. Simple, she'd said. Low-key, she'd said. Just family, she'd said. I looked down at the notice again like it might change if I stared hard enough. Then I looked at the calendar on the wall. My birthday. I didn't cry. I didn't faint. I didn't do that thing women in movies do where they slide down a wall and land in a graceful puddle of sorrow. I felt something else. A pressure behind my eyes. A heat in my chest. A kind of rage so clean and sharp it made me steady. I walked back into the living room holding that paper like a weapon. Martin was sitting on the couch with a stupid party hat tilted sideways on his head, smiling like he was proud of himself for not forgetting his own wife's birthday. Kate was fussing with candles, counting them like she needed proof I really was 60. And Seth was near the window with his phone in his hand, wearing that calm, competent face he always wore. The face that said, "Don't worry. I've got this." My voice came out before I planned it. Whose idea was this? They all looked up at me. Kate smiled. Mine. Mom, come sit. We're about to do candles. I held the letter up. This came to our house today, on my birthday. And it says we're in foreclosure. The air changed. Not dramatic. Not a movie freeze. Just a tiny pause like the room tried to decide if I was joking. Martin blinked. What? I walked over and set the notice on the coffee table, right next to the cake. The cake looked ridiculous next to that paper. Two different worlds touching. This, I said, tapping the page, says final notice. Default. Auction date. Kate's smile slid off her face. Martin leaned forward, squinting, like the letters were too small or too rude to be real. Seth's eyes flicked down and back up. Just once. Just enough. And that was when my stomach sank even deeper. Because that wasn't confusion. That was recognition. Martin looked at me, then at the paper again, then back at me. Anne, he said, and his voice had that soft tone men use when they think you're about to overreact. That can't be right. I laughed once. It wasn't funny. Oh, good, I said. Because if it can't be right, then you can explain why it has our address. You can explain why it's dated for this week. You can explain why it says we're already in default instead of might become a problem someday. Kate picked it up. Her hands were shaking. She read 2 lines and went pale. Dad, she whispered. What is this? Martin's face shifted. He still looked confused, but now there was something under it. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. There has to be a mistake. I've been handling it. I stared at him. I loved my husband. 38 years of marriage doesn't disappear because a man makes a bad decision. But in that moment, standing there with foreclosure language on my birthday cake table, I wanted to grab him by the collar and shake him until the truth fell out like loose change. You've been handling it, I repeated. That's your answer. That's what you're giving me. I've been handling it. He swallowed. It's not what you think. I stepped closer. Martin, I said, and my voice dropped low, the way it did when Kate was a teenager and I caught her lying. If you say that sentence one more time, I'm going to lose the last shred of respect I'm trying to hold on to. Tell me, what happened? Seth cleared his throat. Not loudly. Just enough to put himself into the conversation. Anne, he began, calm as ever, let's not panic. These notices can be. I turned my head so fast it felt like my neck might snap. Don't, I said. Seth blinked. Excuse me? Don't talk to me like I'm a toddler who dropped an ice cream cone, I said. This isn't panic. This is me reading a legal notice that says I'm about to lose my home. So if you've got something to say it like a man who understands consequences. Kate's eyes flashed. Mom, she whispered, like she wasn't sure if she should be horrified or proud. Martin rubbed his face with both hands. I didn't want to worry you, he said. That did it. That sentence. The sentence men used to justify every disaster they created quietly. I laughed again. Still not funny. Oh, you didn't want to worry me, I said. How considerate. So instead you let me turn 60 thinking I had a home. Martin's eyes glistened. I thought I had it under control. Kate's voice cracked. Dad, under control means there isn't a foreclosure notice. Martin looked at her like he was begging. Sweetheart, it was temporary. Temporary. Another word men use when the damage is permanent. I pointed to the notice. Temporary doesn't have an auction date, I said. Temporary doesn't come from a law firm. Tell me what you did. Martin swallowed hard. Then he glanced at Seth. Just a glance. Barely anything. But I saw it. And Kate saw it too. Kate turned to her husband slowly, like she was waking up inside a nightmare. Seth, she said. Why is Dad looking at you? Seth lifted both hands, palms out. I'm just trying to help, he said. Everybody breathe. I stepped forward until I was close enough to see the little twitch at the corner of his mouth. That twitch he got when he thought he was smarter than the room. Help, I repeated. You're always helping. You help with the Wi-Fi. You help with the TV. You help with the investments. You help with passwords. You help with technical stuff. You help so much. Seth, I'm starting to wonder if you help because you're kind or because it gives you control. Kate's jaw tightened. Seth, she said again. Answer the question. Seth looked at her, softened his voice. The voice he used when he wanted Kate to feel silly. Babe, this isn't the time for. Kate snapped. No, she said. Don't babe me. Tell me why my dad is looking at you like you're his lifeline. Martin's shoulders slumped. He looked older in that moment. Not 62. 90. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, he said. I stared at him. That's what you're going with, I said. That's the best you've got. He looked at the carpet. I made some money, he said quietly. At first, Seth showed me how. There it was. The name. The hook. I turned to Seth again. Ah, I said. There it is. Seth's face tightened. Anne, I didn't. I held a finger up. One, I said. You get one sentence before I start saying things I can't take back. Choose carefully. Seth swallowed. Then tried the calm voice again because it was all he had. It was an opportunity, he said. Martin wanted to invest. I explained it. He made his own choices. Kate's face went red. My dad wanted to invest, she said. So you helped him gamble with his house. Seth scoffed like that was unfair. It wasn't gambling, he said. It was crypto. It's different. Martin flinched at the word gambling. And suddenly a memory slid into place for me. Martin in his 20s. Not a bad man. Not a criminal. Just young and cocky and convinced he could beat the odds. A few stupid nights that turned into a few stupid months. Debt. Lies. Shame. The way he promised me he'd never do it again. I hadn't thought about it in years. Because he'd been steady. He'd been Martin. But standing there now, looking at my husband's face, I could see it. That old part of him. The part that wanted to believe he could fix everything with one good run. And Seth knew it. Seth found the scar tissue and pressed right into it. I took a slow breath. Then I aimed my words like darts. Seth, I said, you're right, it's not gambling. Gambling is honest. Gambling doesn't pretend it's a spreadsheet. Seth's eyes flashed. Excuse me? You heard me, I said. At least a casino has the decency to put bright lights over the door and tell you you're about to lose. You did it wearing a nice shirt and calling yourself family. Kate made a sound like she'd been punched. Martin said my name quietly. Anne. I didn't look at him. Not yet. Because Seth still had air in his lungs. And you, I said, pointing at Seth, standing in my living room while I'm holding a foreclosure notice, acting like this is a misunderstanding. You want to know what you are? You're a thief with a college vocabulary. Seth's calm started to crack. I didn't steal anything, he snapped. Kate turned fully toward him. You didn't steal anything? She repeated, incredulous. Then why are my parents getting foreclosed on? Tell us. Right now. Seth hesitated. Just a second. But it was enough. Martin spoke, voice small. The returns were real at first, he said. Money came in. Seth showed me. Kate stared at him. Dad. What returns? Martin's face flushed. The crypto. He said he moved some to my account, that I could reinvest it, grow it, build it. I closed my eyes. Of course. A little win to hook him. Then reinvest. Always reinvest. Seth lifted his chin, defensive. I showed him. He chose to keep going. I opened my eyes and looked straight at him. Stop saying that, I said. Stop saying he chose. You didn't hand him a menu. You handed him a trap. Seth muttered, everybody's an expert when something goes wrong. Kate lunged toward him. What did you do? She demanded. Seth, look at me. What did you do? Seth looked away. And that was the moment I knew. He wasn't just careless. He was hiding. I stepped forward again, voice rising. No, I said. Look at her. Look at your wife. Look at the woman whose mother you're about to make homeless. Look at her and tell her what you did. Seth exhaled hard. Then he started talking fast, like he was trying to outrun the words. It was a network, he said. A pool. I didn't create it. I participated. There were returns. It was working. Kate's eyes narrowed. It was a pyramid. Seth's face tightened. It wasn't, it was a pyramid, Kate said, sharper. Say it. Seth's jaw clenched. It was structured, he said. I laughed, harsh. Structured, I repeated. So is a scam. Martin looked like he might vomit. I didn't know, he whispered. I didn't know it was. I finally turned to him. Martin, I said, and my voice cracked for 1 second. You don't get to be 62 and still not know what a con looks like. His eyes filled. I thought I could fix it, he said. I thought I could make us safe. My chest tightened. Because that was Martin. Always trying to be the protector. And Seth used that. Kate's voice shook. Oh, Mooch! Martin looked at her, ashamed. I don't know, he admitted. It moved. Seth said it moved. He said it was in wallets. Seth cut in. That's how it works. I snapped my head to him. And who controlled the wallets? I demanded. You. Right? You controlled them. You controlled passwords. You controlled portals. You controlled everything because you love being the guy who knows things other people don't. Seth's nostrils flared. I was managing it, he said. That's what people do. Kate's voice turned deadly quiet. Did you have access to my parents' accounts? Seth hesitated. Kate stepped closer, eyes blazing. Did you have access? She repeated. Seth's jaw worked. I helped set things up, he said carefully. Martin asked. And there it was. The real mechanism. Not magic. Not coincidence. The most common betrayal in modern marriages. Passwords. Access. The quiet arrogance of a man who thinks being technical means he can touch anything. I looked at Martin. You gave him access, I said. Martin's face collapsed. He was helping, he whispered. He set up the apps. The logins. He was always fixing stuff. I thought it was easier. I nodded slowly. So Seth didn't need to break in. He was invited. Which is exactly why it hurts like a surgical blade. Kate's voice trembled. Dad, did you sign something? Martin swallowed hard. Then he nodded. I signed paperwork, he admitted. Seth said it was part of the investment structure. He said it was temporary. He said it was just to qualify. I felt my vision go white around the edges. What paperwork? I asked. Martin's lips trembled. I didn't read it closely, he whispered. He rushed me. He said it was time-sensitive. Kate stared at Seth like she could have set him on fire with her eyes. Time-sensitive, she said. That's what predators call pressure. Seth rolled his eyes like she was being dramatic. And that was the moment my rage got quiet. Not smaller, sharper. I took one breath. Then I said very calmly, get out. Seth blinked. What? Get out of my house, I repeated. Right now. Seth laughed. Anne, you're being emotional. Kate made a sound like an animal. I stared at him. Emotional, I repeated softly. You're calling me emotional while I'm holding a foreclosure notice on my birthday. Seth tried to look confident. He tried. But I could see fear under it now. Because now the room wasn't his anymore. Now the story was his. And it was ugly. Kate stepped forward, voice shaking with rage. Get out, she said. I don't care where you go. Seth scoffed. This isn't your house. He said it like a victory. Like he'd found the cruelest possible angle. I felt Martin flinch behind me. I felt Kate's breath catch. Seth watched both reactions like he enjoyed them. That's what made me sure. He wasn't an idiot. He was a bully. He wanted the panic. He wanted the collapse. He wanted us to feel powerless. I took one step closer to him and smiled. Not a happy smile. The kind of smile that scares people. You're right about one thing, I said quietly. Seth's eyes narrowed. This house is in foreclosure, I continued. And you just made the biggest mistake of your life by getting comfortable in my living room. Seth's mouth twisted. Oh yeah? I leaned in slightly. You thought the worst thing you could do to me was scare me, I said. But the worst thing you did was show me who you are in front of my daughter. Kate's voice cracked like glass. You're disgusting, she spat. You're a parasite in a button-down. Seth snapped, I'm your husband. Kate laughed, bitter. No, she said. You're a mistake I filed taxes with. Martin stood up, unsteady, like he wasn't sure his legs would work. Seth, he said. How much is left? Seth shrugged. It's complicated. Martin's voice rose. How much? Seth snapped. I don't know. I stared at him. You don't know, I repeated. You got access to our life and you don't know. Seth's eyes flashed. I wasn't the only one. Kate pointed toward the door. Out, she said again. Seth looked at her like he was trying to find the version of Kate that used to soothe him. But that version was dead now. He walked to the door, muttering insults under his breath, and right before he left, he turned and said something meant to poison us. This is what happens when you let old people run finances. You people are clueless. He slammed the door. The house shook. The candles on the cake wobbled. And then it was just us. Me, Martin, Kate. And the foreclosure notice sitting there like an accusation. Kate sank onto the couch, shaking. "I can't breathe," she whispered. "I can't. Mom, I can't." Martin stood a few feet away like he didn't deserve to sit. His hands were trembling. "Anne," he said quietly. "I'm sorry." I looked at him. I wanted to scream again. I wanted to throw something. I wanted to go back in time and grab my younger self by the shoulders and say, "Don't ever let anyone else hold the passwords to your life." But what came out was smaller. "Honey," I said, and my voice cracked. "How bad?" Martin stared at the floor. Then he whispered, "We're months behind." Kate made a sharp sobbing sound. "Months," she repeated. Martin nodded, eyes wet. "I kept thinking I could catch up," he said. "I kept thinking the next payout would fix it." Seth kept showing me numbers. He kept saying it was temporary. He kept saying, "Don't worry, Anne." I stared at him. "How long have you been hiding letters?" I asked. Martin flinched like I punched him. Then he whispered, "Since the first warning." Kate's hands flew to her face. I went still. That was the dirty squeeze. Not Seth. Not the scam. The hiding. The daily choice to keep me in the dark while the bank lined up our life like a target. I sat down slowly, the papers still on the table. And I said, "Okay." Kate looked up at me, confused. "Mom," I said, "Okay," I repeated. "Because I'm not wasting the rest of my birthday screaming." Martin started crying quietly. "I didn't want you to see me like that again," he whispered. I was ashamed. I nodded once. "I know," I said. "But shame doesn't get to drive my life." I took a breath. Then I stood up and did what I've always done when everything is falling apart. I made a plan. "Before we do anything," I said, "if you're listening right now, hit like and subscribe. I'm serious. Because if you've ever been the woman holding the whole roof up while somebody else quietly loosened the bolts, you already know what kind of story this is." I didn't linger. I didn't beg. I just said it and kept moving. "First," I said, "we call the bank. Tonight. Right now." Martin nodded like a man accepting parole terms. Kate nodded too. "Second," I said, "we gather everything. Statements. Letters. Emails. Anything that shows what happened and when." Martin whispered, "I have them, I hid them." "Great," I said, and my voice got cold again. "Bring them out." He went to the hallway closet and came back with a shoebox. A shoebox. Like our home was a little secret he could stuff away. He set it on the table. Kate opened it and started pulling papers out. First warning. Second warning. Late fees. A printed email chain with Seth. And then a document with signatures. Martin's signature. A co-signer line. A digital confirmation page. Kate's face tightened. "What is this?" she asked. Martin's breathing went shallow. "Seth said it was for the investment," he whispered. I leaned over and read the title. I didn't even need to fully understand it. I just needed to recognize one phrase. Secured by property. I felt my stomach drop again. "Martin," I said quietly, "tell me you didn't put our house on the line." Martin looked at me like he was about to pass out. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I swear I didn't know." Kate's voice went thin. "Dad, you signed something secured by property." Martin covered his mouth. "It was pages," he said. He rushed me. He said if I missed the window, I'd miss the gains. I stared at the papers. I stared at the signatures. And I pictured Seth in his nice shirt leaning over my husband's shoulder like a friendly son-in-law. Time sensitive. Opportunity. Gains. Family. I looked up. "Third," I said, "we change every password tonight, every account, every login, email, banking, utilities, everything." Martin nodded fast. "Yes." Kate was already on her phone, opening apps, checking alerts. "Mom," she said, I don't even know what he has access to. I nodded. We're going to find out. That night, we didn't blow out candles. We didn't cut cake. We sat at the kitchen table with laptops open, phones plugged in, and the foreclosure notice in the middle like a centerpiece. Martin told us everything. Not in a heroic confession. In ugly pieces. Seth had been in Martin's ear for months. Talking about retirement. Talking about inflation. Talking about how people who don't move money get left behind. Seth used words like consistent and secure and diversified. He made it sound like the only risk was being too cautious. Martin admitted something that made my stomach twist. The first time I didn't have the payment, he whispered, Seth told me to wait. He said we shouldn't move money out because it would ruin the run. What run? Kate snapped. Martin swallowed. The gains. He kept saying the gains were right there. So the mortgage slipped. Not because we were poor. Because our money was being treated like fuel for somebody else's engine. Then the letters came. And Martin hid them. He said he'd catch it up next month. Seth said the next payout would fix everything. Martin wanted to believe him because Martin wanted to believe he was still the man who could protect his family. And then, on my birthday, the final notice arrived. Not because the bank cared about symbolism. Because the bank doesn't care about your cake. The bank only cares about its timeline. The next morning we called the bank. We sat on hold for almost an hour listening to cheerful music that felt like a cruelty. When the representative finally came on, she was polite in the way that means she'd said the same horrible thing 1,000 times. She confirmed the missed payments. She confirmed the cure amount. She confirmed the auction schedule if we couldn't bring the account current. Then she said, "Ma'am, I also see a large line of credit activity tied to the property." I felt my blood go cold. "What line of credit?" I asked. There was a pause while she reviewed. Then she said, "A home equity line. Draws began several months ago." Kate's face went white. Martin's mouth opened and nothing came out. Because we didn't have a home equity line. At least I didn't. I ended the call and sat there staring at my husband. "Martin," I said quietly, "what is she talking about?" Martin looked like he was about to pass out. "I don't know," he whispered. "I swear I don't." Kate stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. "Dad," she said, voice shaking, "did you sign anything else?" Martin shook his head, panicked. "I signed what Seth told me," he said. "I didn't know it was a loan." And there it was. The pivot. The rule change. This wasn't just bad investing. This was debt tied to our home. Real debt. Paper debt. The kind that doesn't care if you cry. The kind that doesn't care if you were tricked. We drove to the bank branch that afternoon. All of us. Like we were going to walk in and ask politely for our life back. The manager met us in a little office and pulled up the account history. He didn't explain how any crime works. He didn't need to. He simply showed us a timeline of activity and approvals and digital confirmations tied to Martin's credentials. Martin kept whispering, "I didn't do that," like repeating it could undo the past. Then the manager said something that made me want to vomit. "Ma'am, the email on record for the alerts is not yours." I froze. "What email?" I asked. He read it off. It wasn't mine. It wasn't Martin's either. It was Seth's. Kate made a strangled sound. Martin's face crumpled. And I felt something inside me go very quiet. Because now the betrayal wasn't abstract. Now it wasn't market collapse and bad luck. Now it was access. Now it was control. Now it was deliberate. Seth didn't just talk Martin into bad decisions. Seth positioned himself between our money and our eyes. He turned off the alarms. He redirected the alerts. He made sure the truth didn't reach me until it arrived with a final notice on my birthday. When we got back to the house, Kate was shaking. "I'm calling a lawyer," she said. Martin flinched. Kate, I don't care, she snapped. I don't care if it's midnight. I don't care if it's a holiday. I'm calling a lawyer and I'm filing. Mom, he put his email on your loan alerts. I nodded once. Do it, I said. And here's where I'm going to tell you something because it matters. If you're listening and you've ever had someone touch your money and call it help, leave a comment. Seriously. Don't just sit there thinking you're the only one. Comment. Tell me where you're listening from and what they called it. Because the most dangerous people don't show up wearing ski masks. They show up wearing confidence. Kate's lawyer moved fast. Not with drama. With paper. With requests. With the kind of calm that scares guilty people. Her name was Nadine, and she spoke like a woman who didn't waste syllables. She came to our house 2 days later, sat at my kitchen table, and didn't smile once. She looked at Martin and said, "Did you give your son-in-law permission to access your accounts?" Martin started to say he was helping. Nadine held up her hand. "No," she said. "That's not what I asked." Martin swallowed. "Yes," he admitted. "I gave him access." Nadine nodded like she'd already assumed that. Then she looked at me. "Do you have access?" she asked. I said, "To what?" She said, "To your own financial accounts." I felt heat rise in my face. "I thought I did," I said. Nadine didn't react. She just said, "We're going to find out." Seth tried to play innocent at first. He texted Kate saying we were overreacting. He texted me saying I'd always been emotional. That one made Kate laugh so hard she cried. Then Nadine sent him a formal notice requesting preservation of records. And suddenly Seth's tone changed. He showed up at our house uninvited and stood on the porch with that same calm face. The calm face that said, "I'm the adult here." Kate opened the door and didn't let him inside. He tried to speak softly like she was a child. "Kate, babe, this is getting out of hand." Kate cut him off. "Don't babe me," she said. "You redirected my parents' loan alerts to your email." Seth blinked like he couldn't believe she said it out loud. "Okay," he said carefully, "that was just so I could monitor it. I was helping." Kate stared at him. "You think the word helping is a shield," she said. "It's not. It's just your favorite lie." Seth's face tightened. Then he did what men like Seth always do when charm doesn't work. He turned mean. "You're choosing them over your husband," he snapped. "You're choosing your mommy over me?" Kate smiled. Cold. "Oh," she said. "Now you want to be a husband. Where was that energy when you were putting your email on my parents' mortgage alerts?" Seth looked past her into the house and raised his voice. "Anne," he called, "tell your daughter to calm down." I stepped into view and said, "Just one word." "No." It hit him harder than yelling ever could. He scoffed, bitter. "You're really going to do this," he said. I stepped closer. "You want to know what I'm doing," I said quietly. "I'm making sure you never get close enough to touch my life again." Seth's eyes narrowed. "You people are acting like I robbed a bank." Kate laughed once. "No," she said. "You robbed your family. Which is worse, because you did it smiling." He left, but not before he tried one last stab. "Good luck keeping that house," he said. "Because it's already gone." And that's when I knew. He didn't just want money. He wanted humiliation. He wanted us to feel doomed. He wanted to win even if everyone lost. The next week was a blur of calls and documents. Nadine requested records. The bank printed timelines. Martin sat beside me like a punished child, signing forms with trembling hands. Every time a new page revealed a new piece of information, Martin would whisper, "I didn't know," like it was a prayer. One afternoon, Nadine called me and said, "Anne, I need you at my office." I went alone. I didn't bring Martin. Because I needed to hear the truth without watching him fall apart. Nadine sat me down and slid a folder across the desk. Inside were screenshots of alert settings, email change confirmations, and a chain of messages between Seth and Martin. Seth telling him, "Don't tell Anne yet." Seth telling him if she panics, she'll ruin the timing. Timing. Like my life was a schedule he managed. Nadine looked at me and said, "This wasn't a mistake." I nodded slowly. "I know," I said. Then she added, "And I think it's bigger than you know." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Nadine tapped one page. "This HELOC," she said. "The draws, the account numbers. Some of the transfers went to a destination that doesn't match the investment platform Martin described." I stared at her. "So where did it go?" Nadine held my gaze. "I can't say yet," she said. "But I can tell you this. Seth didn't just advise your husband. He inserted himself into control points. Alerts, passwords, access. That's intentional. That's how people hide things." I drove home with my hands tight on the steering wheel. When I got in the house, Martin was in the kitchen, staring at the table like it was going to accuse him. He looked up and started to cry immediately. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry." I didn't comfort him. "Not yet." I said, "Seth told you not to tell me." Martin flinched. He stared at me, caught. Then he nodded. "Yes," he whispered. "He said you'd panic. He said you'd make it worse." I felt my throat tighten. "You let him talk about me like I'm a problem," I said. Martin's shoulders shook. "I was scared," he whispered. "I was ashamed. I didn't want you to look at me like you looked at me today." I stepped closer. "Martin," I said, "I'm looking at you like this because you gave a smug little man the keys to our life." Martin nodded, crying. "I know," he whispered. "I know." And still, even with all that, I didn't scream. Because I was past screaming. I was in the part where I got quiet and dangerous. 2 months after my birthday, Kate called me late at night and her voice sounded wrong. Thin. "Mom," she said, "can you come over?" I drove to her place with my jaw clenched. When I got there, she was sitting on her couch holding an envelope, same kind of paper, same kind of language. Her eyes were swollen. "I got a notice," she whispered. My stomach dropped. "What kind?" I asked, even though I already knew. Kate swallowed. "Notice of default, not final foreclosure. Not yet, but the beginning of the same machine." She shook her head like she couldn't make the words real. "He did it here too," she whispered. "He had access to our accounts and he kept moving things around. He missed payments. He kept telling me it was fine." I sat down beside her and took the paper from her hands. Same cold language. Different address. My daughter. My baby. Being hunted by the same system. I felt something in me crack open. A grief that turned into fury instantly. "He didn't just hurt us," I said. Kate nodded, tears falling. "He tried to erase us," she whispered. I pulled her into my arms and held her while she cried. Then I pulled back and wiped her cheeks with my thumb like I did when she was little. "Listen to me," I said, voice steady. "You're not going to lose everything." Kate laughed through tears. "Mom, we already did." I shook my head. "No," I said. "We lost comfort. We lost safety. We lost an illusion." I looked at her. "But we didn't lose each other," I said. "And he doesn't get to take our ability to rebuild." Kate's mouth trembled. "I feel stupid," she whispered. "Don't," I said. "You married a liar. That doesn't make you stupid. It makes him dangerous." Kate filed for divorce within the week. Seth responded the way Seth always responded. He tried to sound calm while saying cruel things. He sent her messages like, "You're emotional." He sent her messages like, "You're letting your mother poison you." He sent her a message that made my hands shake when she showed it to me. He wrote, "Your parents are going down anyway. You might as well come with me while you still can." While you still can. Like he was the lifeboat after drilling the hole. Nadine read that message and said, "Good. Let him keep talking." Weeks passed in a grind. Phone calls. Bank visits. Paperwork. Martin carried boxes and made coffee and did dishes like punishment was the only language he understood. He also slept on the couch without me asking. Every morning he'd say, "What can I do today?" And every morning I'd answer, "Tell the truth." Sometimes he'd start to say something and stop, like he was afraid the truth would make me leave. I started to realize something awful. The betrayal wasn't just Seth. The betrayal was how many days Martin chose silence over honesty. That was the part that kept me awake at night. One evening, I came into the kitchen and found Martin sitting at the table staring at his hands. He looked up like a guilty child. "I ruined you," he whispered. I sat across from him. "You didn't ruin me," I said. He shook his head. "I did," he whispered. "I did this. I promised you." I stared at him for a long time. Then I said, "Martin, you didn't do this because you're evil." He flinched. "You did it because you were ashamed," I continued. "And shame is a stupid, stubborn thing. It convinces good men to hide instead of ask for help." Martin's eyes filled again. "I thought I could fix it," he whispered. "I know," I said. He looked at me, desperate. "Do you hate me?" he asked. I exhaled slowly. "I hate what happened," I said. "I hate the lies. I hate the letters hidden like dirty secrets. I hate that I turned 60 holding a foreclosure notice." Martin nodded, tears falling. "But I don't hate you," I added. He broke then. Quiet crying. The kind of crying men do when the world finally forces them to feel what they've been dodging. I reached across the table and took his hand. "You're going to let me handle the finances from now on," I said. Martin nodded quickly. "Yes," he whispered. "Yes, and you're going to be honest," I said. "Even when it's ugly. Even when you feel small." Martin squeezed my hand. "I will," he whispered. "I swear." I looked at him hard. "Because I'm not doing this twice," I said. "I know," he whispered. Then, in the middle of all that chaos, another letter arrived. Not from the bank. Not from a lawyer. From an estate solicitor. It was about my aunt. My mother's sister. The one who always smelled like expensive soap and had a polite smile that always felt like she saw through people. She'd died months earlier. We knew there might be something. But estates take time. Probate. Verification. Forms. I sat at the table and read the number twice because my brain refused to accept it. $1.7 million. I stared at it so long my eyes burned. Martin walked in and saw my face. "What?" he asked, voice wary, like he was afraid of another disaster. I looked up slowly. "My aunt left money," I said. Martin froze. "How much?" he whispered. I told him. He sat down like his knees stopped working. Then he put his hands over his face and whispered, "Oh my God." Kate came over that night and I told her too. She stared at me like I told her the sky was opening. Then she started crying. Relief crying. The kind that shakes your whole body. Then she laughed through tears and said, "Seth is going to choke when he finds out." I didn't laugh. Not yet. Because money doesn't solve betrayal. Money solves logistics. Betrayal still has to be dealt with. And I wasn't going to let one check turn me into the kind of woman who thinks cash equals closure. But I also wasn't going to pretend it didn't change the game. The first thing I did was not buy anything. The first thing I did was open a new account in my name. Only my name. Then I sat Martin down and said, "From now on, we don't handle anything quietly. We handle it together, and I have the passwords." Martin nodded like a man accepting rules he should have respected years ago. Yes, he said. Absolutely. When the money cleared, I used it carefully. Not like a lottery winner. Like a woman who learned the hard way what safety costs. I brought our mortgage current and stopped the auction. Paid the arrears. Paid the fees. Paid what the machine demanded to release its grip. Then I did something else. I bought peace. Not a mansion. Not a show. A modest house in a stable neighborhood near where we already lived. Paid outright. No mortgage. No bank letters. No fear that a man's secret could take the roof away again. And I helped Kate cure her default too. Not because she couldn't handle her life. Because Seth had vandalized it. Kate cried when I handed her the paperwork. She tried to refuse. She said she couldn't take it. I looked at her and said, "Kate, you aren't taking. You're recovering. There's a difference." She hugged me so hard I couldn't breathe. And right around then, Seth's world finally met consequences that weren't just social. Nadine filed a civil action tied to the financial harm and the access. Not a dramatic courtroom circus. Paper. Timeline. Receipts. Seth's employer got notified because he'd used professional language and contacts to advise people. And 2 weeks later, we found out he'd been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Kate didn't celebrate. She just sat at my kitchen table and whispered, "He did this to himself." I nodded. "Yes," I said. "He did." Then came one more dirty squeeze. The one Seth thought would break me. A process server showed up at my new house one afternoon. Polite. Professional. He handed me an envelope. I looked at the return address and felt that old heat rise in my chest. Seth was trying to sue. Not because he'd been wronged. Because he wanted to punish us for standing up. He claimed defamation. He claimed interference. He claimed we'd ruined his reputation. I stared at the paper and laughed once. Still not funny. Martin looked like he might throw up. Kate's face went white. Nadine read it and smiled for the first time since we met. "Good," she said. "Now he's on record doing what he always does. Trying to intimidate." Seth didn't understand something simple. I was past intimidation. I was past fear. I'd already held the worst paper in my hands on my birthday. Everything after that was just noise. Discovery forced disclosure. The divorce forced financial transparency. And because Seth had been so comfortable being smug in writing, his own messages did the work. There were texts where he told Martin not to tell me. There were emails where he instructed changes to alert settings. There were messages where he said, "It's fine, just let me manage it." Manage. That word again. His favorite disguise. The court didn't care about his tone. The court cared about the timeline. And when the judgment came down, it didn't look like a movie. No shouting. No dramatic collapse. Just a quiet legal order that required repayment and barred him from contacting us outside attorneys and required divorce logistics. The kind of paperwork that doesn't ask what you think. It tells you what's already happened. And yes, his employer didn't keep him. He wasn't fired with fireworks. He was let go quietly. Because companies don't like men who bring risk into the room and call it help. Kate's divorce finalized not long after. Seth tried to contest. Tried to argue. Tried to claim misunderstandings. But paper doesn't care about tantrums. And I want to say this part clearly, because I'm not going to linger. If you've ever had someone wreck your life and then call you dramatic for reacting, comment where you're watching from. Just that. Where you're watching from. Because I promise you, you aren't alone. After everything, there was a moment sitting on my back porch with a cup of coffee where I realized something that made me sit very still. My 60th birthday was the day my life almost collapsed. But it was also the day I stopped letting other people steer my life. Martin sat down next to me that morning, quiet. He looked older than he used to. Not from age, from consequence. "I don't deserve you," he said softly. I took a sip of coffee and stared out at the yard. "No," I said. "You don't." Martin flinched like the words hit him hard. I kept my voice calm. "But you're going to spend the rest of your life earning trust back," I said. "Not with grand gestures. Not with apologies. With honesty. Every day." Martin nodded slowly. "I will," he whispered. I looked at him then. Really looked. He wasn't Seth. He wasn't a predator. He was a man who got weak in the wrong place. A man who got ashamed. A man who got manipulated. And he was still here, trying. Seth would never change. Seth would just find another room to play smart in. Kate called later that day and told me she was unpacking. She sounded tired. But lighter. "Mom," she said, "I keep expecting him to text me and tell me I'm overreacting." I smiled. "If he does," I said, "send him a photo of your new security system." Kate laughed. Then her voice softened. "Thank you," she whispered. I swallowed hard. "You're my daughter," I said. "There's nothing to thank me for." She paused. Then she said, "I used to think being strong meant staying calm. And now," I said, "now I think being strong means finally saying what you know out loud," Kate replied. "Even if it ruins the party." I laughed quietly. "Yeah," I said. "Especially if it ruins the party." That night, Martin and I sat in our living room. No cake. No candles. Just quiet. Martin reached for my hand. I let him. Not because everything was fine, but because we were still here. And because I learned something I wish I'd learned sooner. If a man wants to protect you, he doesn't do it by hiding the truth. He does it by facing it with you. And if someone tries to take your home, your security, your dignity, you don't beg them to understand what they did. You make them understand. On paper. In court. In the silence that follows when their excuses finally run out. My name is Anne, and this is what happened when I was pushed beyond restraint. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this story.